Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lawrence Douglas County Planning Commission meeting of June 22nd, 2026. I'm hearing a little bit of an echo.
That was me, sorry.
Thank you. The first thing we need to do this evening is to understand the rules of the road, and Becky Pepper will tell us what those are.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair, and good evening, everyone. Please silence your cell phones to minimize distraction during the meeting. When the chair calls for public comment, please approach the podium and indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raised hand function to indicate they wish to speak during the public comment. Once your name is called, please unmute and turn your camera on to provide your comments. Please state your name before speaking. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The primary format to access and participate in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed. The chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel or on cable channel 25.
Thank you. The first thing I want to do this evening is welcome our newest commissioner, Commissioner Perdue, and invite her to introduce herself as much as she would care to.
Thank you. I'm Andy Perdue, and I am a fifth-generation Kansan and longtime Lawrence resident. I've been off and on in Lawrence since 1999, and I currently run a hobby farm in Douglas County. So I look forward to serving.
Thank you. The first thing on our agenda now is the election of officers for 2026-2027. It has been our practice and our precedent that the prior year chairperson has made the nomination for the new chair. And that has typically been the prior chair has nominated the vice chair, and then the vice chair has become the chair. And before that happened, usually the vice chair has anointed someone else who has tagged along and gone to the pre-meeting agenda items and is ready to assume that role of vice chair. This year, we do not have the chair who served last year to make the nomination. So as chair pro tem, I'm jumping in to make the nomination of Mike Kelso as our chair. And I'm making this nomination because Mr. Kelso has not only served well on the Planning Commission, but he is a longtime Douglas County resident who has served in many capacities involving children and adults, involving the fair, involving llamas that I remember going to see. And I think that his skills as chairing a commission are great. So I would nominate Mr. Kelso. Are there any seconds?
I'd second that.
And there's a second. Are there any other nominations?
This is an open time for discussion.
But I wanted to see if there were any other nominations. I don't see any other nominations, and would anybody like to have some discussion?
I would like to make a comment or two if I could. I understand that the commission does have a tradition of, just as you described, where an outgoing chair would oftentimes make a nomination. But I want to back up just a bit from that tradition and make sure that everybody understands that our bylaws govern this. Our bylaws say that during the June meeting, this board will elect a chair and a vice chair. It is completely silent on the tradition that we have behind how that's done. I've come to believe that tradition has value and its importance, and the way I've always come to think of that is that with that chair, that vice chair role operating in that capacity for a year, it's given the commission an opportunity to observe them, to see them, to understand if that is in fact someone that makes sense to them to be fit for that role, aligned with what they believe that role requires. I think that's an important difference that we need to remember. precedent, procedure, and even the tradition itself can become momentum. And in my opinion, that's the wrong reason for us to go forward down a path. So I want to make sure that that's clear. There's other traditions as well around how that new person coming into the chair might make their nomination, but in no way would I consider that to be an anointment. I understand it's just maybe just a choice of words, but it really should be considered an open process that we all use. At this point, I do not intend to make a separate nomination for chair, but I did want to make that statement for the record.
I agree with you, and I think it's just another reason that we should look at the bylaws as soon as we're able to do it, because our bylaws ought to clearly spell what we would like that process
I
to
read them
be.
this morning, yes.
Good. Is there any further discussion? Okay, then I would call for the question, and the nomination of Mr. Kelso as Chair for the Planning Commission for the 2026-2027 time period. All in favor, raise your right hand. It is unanimous.
I'm going to abstain.
Well, sorry. And there are some commissioners online, and I was looking up and down the people here, but other than Mr. Kelso, I think it was unanimous.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now we have the opportunity to nominate a vice chair.
Just
Are there
point of order, at this point, is Mr. Kelso the chair of the meeting and takes it from here?
That's correct.
Right?
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, do you want to change places, or can you manage from where you are?
To second the bylaws, I don't think our bylaws say where we got to sit, so I'll stay right here.
I think that's true.
Tradition would be right there, but I'm going to stay right here. Okay, so we need to choose a vice chair for the upcoming year. I know we have several that have done this job, many that haven't. Are there any nominations? If not, I would make one.
I do have a nomination to make, but I'll wait for you.
I would like to ask Mr. Munch if he would consider it.
I would second that nomination.
I accept.
Okay.
I have one comment to make about this. I love Commissioner Munch and very much eager for him to serve. I don't know if we do that at this meeting or if we do it the next year. One of the things about momentum in tradition is that it's led us to a place where we have, this will be going on to our Commissioner DeVore, Commissioner Hayden, Commissioner Kelso, and then Commissioner Munch, all 4 county appointees. And one of the traditions that we have, absolutely not in the bylaws or anything, is that we find a way to alternate between city and county chairs. I'm thrilled that Commissioner Munch is willing to serve, and I think that he would be a great vice chair, but I just want to put that out there as well, if that's a consideration that someone wants to make.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other nominations? Or any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of Commissioner Munch serving as the vice chair for the year 2026-2077, please raise your right hand. And I see 3 online. All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Thank you for being willing. All right. Did we pass over A number 1?
That is just general links for your awareness. There's
Okay.
no mention on that one.
All right, well, then we will move on to Section B for the minutes for the last meeting. Are there any questions, concerns, comments, corrections about the previous meeting's minutes? If not, I would gladly accept a motion for approval.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any discussion on approving the minutes? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. On to committee reports. Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board, do we have any update?
We had a meeting where we had to approve the new regulations that were adopted. They've been out for discussion for 20 days, 30 days, and they were unanimously approved. And there is a bicycle plan that is online on what are the needs for cyclists in Douglas County, and I believe the survey is still open to go in and vote on it. So if you have not done that, and I'm sure somebody here, I've gone in and made my comments on it, but I would suggest you go in and look at it.
And is that voting open to anybody in the county or?
Yes, anybody in the county. Anybody in the county.
Okay. Questions, comments? Thank you. Charlie? The North Lawrence Comprehensive Corridor Study.
We did have a meeting recently, and the consultants brought a lot of very interesting information, which will be online soon. I haven't received a notice yet that it's online, but they did tell us of 5 areas of particular interest in North Lawrence that they had been looking at. 4 of them are for commercial spaces, 1 behind Johnny's Tavern, 1 what I think of as right near the intersection where I used to go play bridge in that, and I think you can still get your driver's license there. And 2 other intersections on the main corridor. And then to the east, there's one that they have identified as good potential for housing. They gave us a lot of information about how many households a grocery store needs, because people in North Lawrence have been asking for a grocery store for a very long time, and it turns out that they really need 7,000 households. They say that we've got about 2,000 now, but a small grocery, something like Aldi's, might work. And they have suggested that there would be more connections and focus on the river, particularly on that behind Johnny's site, as being a good place to focus on the river and have some restaurants and small shops. They will have a community opportunity on July 8th at venue 123, where they'll have a lot of big maps and a lot of information showing us the kinds of options they have come up with. And once again, we'll all have an opportunity to participate and identify what things we think are good and that we'd like them to pursue. But I think it's a very exciting time, and I think that there are a lot of opportunities in North Lawrence, and I hope everybody will take the chance to look at those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
If I could, please. A few months ago in an update, I'd asked the question about does this body of work include, or are we talking about the Chief Stadium that's going to be built just down the road? And if so, how is that informing this work? I've got to think that's a game changer for what North Lawrence looks like.
Well, I think that it would be good for you to participate in the July 8th
Okay.
opportunity. But you did have that question, and I took that question back to the task force and asked it, and that has not been a focus. The focus has been, what do we have now? What is it that we have learned from the task force and from they're meeting with many other groups. They've met with the Chamber of Commerce, they've met with business people, they've met with residents in North Lawrence, and they're getting their information from a lot of people and trying to bring it all together in a way that's going to make sense for North Lawrence. I hesitate to speculate, but sometimes I can't resist. And in this case, I think once this study is done, there'll be a follow-on thing that will have more detail. That may be a more appropriate time to be looking at what the chiefs are
All right,
doing.
appreciate that. Now, they're going to put $3-4 billion with the B dollars 20 miles down the road, and that exit is going to be the first exit north
Yeah.
of the stadium, and the opportunity.
And that is one kind of opportunity in North Lawrence, but there's also the opportunity for all of us. And part of the planning has been, how do we make North Lawrence feel more like part of Lawrence? How do we make it more accessible?
Yeah, I like that too.
And so that's really been,
Let's do both things.
yeah.
Thank
We
you.
want to do it all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And don't forget about the Eudora exit on I-70.
Eudora or
It's Eudora, Tonganoxie, both.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
yeah, okay, all right. Thank you very much for that update. On to communications. Have we received any written communications from the public that are not in the packet?
All communications received by the deadline were included as part of your packet this evening.
Do we have any written communications from staff, planning commissioners, or other commissioners?
None this evening.
Do we have any written action waiver requests determinations made by the city engineer?
Also none this evening.
Any disclosure of ex parte communications amongst the commissioners? Any declaration of abstentions from specific agenda items by the commissioners? I have one, which Mr. Munch, or Commissioner Munch, you'll get to take care of one item because I need to abstain myself from item number 2.
Yep, fair enough.
2 unexpected turns of events for the evening. And now we are at the section where we have general public comment. This is for items that are tied to the Planning Commission, but not on the current agenda. You have 3 minutes, and there will be a clock ringing up here. And if you, when you come forward, please state your name, where you live, and you'll have the floor for up to 3 minutes. So is there any general public comment?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dominique. I live in 66049. I was just looking at the agendas for tonight and seeing a lot of deferred items, and I was just curious about why they were deferred. I'm interested mostly in the language one that was for tonight, the cleanup, and I was wondering if you could give staff like an opportunity just to perhaps enlighten me on, did we need more time? Was there some complications? Was, just kind of what's going on why it was deferred? Because when I first saw this agenda, I was like, dang, Wednesday was going to be a ringer for everybody, and it was going to be a really, really long meeting. And now it's very small, which is fine. I hope you guys get to go home early and don't have to stay very long. But I do think, and I don't know if this is necessarily in the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, but if you could ask staff, like, what are the considerations when it gets deferred? What is the next process? Is there somebody else that could have been on the agenda tomorrow or tonight instead? Kind of give the background information, if possible, if you guys would want to do that or allow staff to speak on that. It's just something that I was thinking of as somebody who's just been trying to understand kind of like the way that the city is moving, the way that applications move, the way that the planning process happens. I know there's a lot of stuff that is not open to the public, and I understand and respect that, but just to kind of give, I guess, a little bit of an understanding of how things maybe get triaged, or if an applicant does defer, or if the staff defers I know there's complications with like the time limits and the legal notices, but like, is there a process? What does that look like? Does that defer an applicant if the staff does it a month or 2 months, or, I know the applicant for the language was the city, so I don't think that's going to be like, it's not a developer problem, it's the city. But that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And for those that haven't been a part of this, the commission doesn't typically respond to questions live, no matter how valid or concerned they are, but we take them into consideration. Anybody else have any general public comment? Seeing none, we will have, before we can move into item number 1, we need to recess the Lawrence Douglas County Municipal Planning Commission meeting and convene a joint meeting with the Baldwin City Planning Commission and the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Commission. Did I do that correctly? All right.
That's pretty good. Okay.
Sure, I'm taking off.
Okay.
I have to go get.
All right. And so we will turn over to staff for item number 1.
Ready? Okay.
All right, good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Catherine Week, one of the planners in the Planning Office. I'm here to present an item before you as a rezoning request. It's item Z260036, that's a typo on the slide, for 3.3 acres adjacent to the Vinland Runway or Vinland Airport. And the request is from AG2 to LI1. I just want to say we did not have communications at the time of the publication of the staff report, but we did get communications in. They are all in your packet. So I did do a small PowerPoint just to orient us on where this is and what the request is, but I'm going to rely primarily on the information in the staff report when you have questions. And I think we'll see some of the concerns that the residents that have submitted communications have based on, I think, access, uses, and just rezoning in general next to the airport. So we'll talk about those and we can hopefully answer your questions if you have them. Whoops. Interesting. Let's try that again. All right, let's choose the. Okay, the mouse.
Is in the space bar or backspace to go back and forth? See if that works.
Backspace.
Well,
No.
Beginning.
That's a big negative. Let's try this. There we go. Okay, so this is the general area for what we are talking about this evening. This is just north of Vinland, and it is to the east of what is US Highway 59. It is at the intersection of North 700 Road, roughly, it's not directly at the intersection, North 700 Road or Highway 460 and East 1700 Road, which is also, I think, Highway 1055. Just to talk about the key points, just to get everybody oriented on what the request is about. This property is not within an urban growth area. It is, however, within that 3-mile notification area of Baldwin City, which is why we convened a joint meeting, if they so choose. The Baldwin City Planning Commission is not here, but the Planning Office did send a communication, which was also in your packet this evening. The property is located within the AG2 zoning district, and it currently has an existing agricultural storage building, which I believe is being used for storage, as well as a portion of the runway for the airport itself. So that runway runs through this parcel as portion of the parcel. And the runway is not included in the rezoning request. That runway operates under the existing CUP as the runway. So it is not in the request. It is just the kind of flag area of that parcel shape that is being considered for the rezoning. So this particular use, which is classified as the airport or private airstrip heliport for public or private, because it is associated with the airport, their proposal, it is permitted in that AG2 district and the LI district, but only with conditional use permit. The airport or adjacent airport proper, the larger parcel where the airport operates out of, and the associated businesses that are aviation related, that parcel is zoned LI, and the runway operates under that existing CUP from 1985. And interestingly, in doing the history, the CUP in 1985, which permitted that extension of the runway and kind of acknowledged that there was an existing airport there, they couldn't find documentation of the original CUP, if there was one. It seemed to be grandfathered in sometime after 1978. So it has been in existence for a while. The first official CUP seems to be from 1985. The use, as I mentioned, is permitted in both districts. Rezoning was recommended by planning staff because it is under that airport, private airstrip, heliport, public or private use, which is associated with the airport. Planning staff recommended that to unify that part of the use, that they pursue the rezoning. There are other steps that they have to go through if the rezoning is successful, and or if the rezoning is not successful, there are still additional steps they would have to do if they choose to proceed. And I can go into detail on what those are here in a minute. Oh, I didn't learn my lesson the first time. Try that again. Okay, so here's a couple images to orient us onto exactly what we're talking about. The property location, the blue dot is kind of the general location for where the existing storage building exists. You can see the general shape of that parcel is kind of a flag shape, which includes the south or middle to south section of the runway, and then an area that is a field, so to speak, and also encompasses that storage building. The property is currently developed, as it shows, with that storage building that they're using. And the second image shows the area that would be rezoned, which is just east of that blue line. So it would exclude the runway area itself and just incorporate that 3.3 acres that has the structure on it. I'm not going to roll the mouse. I'm going to click this time. Okay. So review criteria that anytime we're looking at any rezoning, there are 10 review criteria that is outlined and that planning staff has to use to consider any rezoning application, and then the Planning Commission also uses those criteria to weigh which criteria points may have more weight and make a determination or a recommendation. So these are the review criteria for rezonings. We look at the zoning and uses of nearby property. We look at the character of the area. We look at the suitability of the subject property for the uses to which it's been restricted currently. That would be under the AG2 district. We look at the length of time that the property is vacant, if it is vacant. The extent to which removal of those restrictions in the current zoning would detrimentally affect nearby properties. We look at the gain, if there is any, to the public for the denial of the application compared to the hardship imposed upon the landowner. We look at the conformance with the comprehensive plan and any other adopted plans, and then suitability of the property for agriculture uses as it relates specifically in the code to AG1. We still look at agricultural and private farmland, but specific in the code, it talks about the AG1 district. This is AG2. So there are some prime farmland and class 2 soils on this parcel. But as far as the review criteria goes, the AG1 code language is not applicable. And then we also look at any impact on other environmentally sensitive land, which could also include the prime farmland. And then staff has to make a recommendation based on those criteria for you all to consider. And ultimately, the Board of County Commissioners once you make a recommendation. All right. So this is looking at the existing zoning and the proposed zoning if it were successful. This is just kind of zoomed into the actual airport and the surrounding Vinland and agricultural area. As you can see, I'm calling it the airport proper because it's the larger parcel that houses the operations of the airport and the associated aviation businesses. That area is zoned LI already, so that's the purple area. And then Vinland and some of the land, including the runway and adjacent to the runway, is zoned AG2. If you recall, when the county did their code change in 2020, AG2 were those parcels that are smaller than the minimum requirement for AG1. So any parcel that was already smaller than what would be required for that AG1 district, which is 20 acres, got rezoned to the AG2 district. And then AG1 is the light blue area, which are those larger ag parcels. Then the proposed zoning is, you can see this shaded, in here it's showing black, and in the staff report I think it is purple, but this shaded area of that parcel is what would be the proposed area for the rezoning and turning that, just that small piece into the LI to associate with that airport. Because they're proposing a hangar and maintenance shop for planes, storage of planes, and maybe a small office associated with that airport, that's how the use is classified under that airport use. And I'm going to talk about future processes because the rezoning does introduce potential other uses that could be permitted in the LI district, similar to what is happening on the larger airport parcel, where there are businesses that are not necessarily specific to this airport, but they are aviation related. So they are permitted in that LI district. And we'll talk about uses that could potentially be permitted in this district and processes for protections to the area if it were rezoned. So this is images to show you kind of the character of the area. I've kind of zoomed in to show, I don't know if they call it a village or Vinland Village or Vinland proper, but this is the old historic Vinland area. It is just north of this parcel. It exists along this East 1719 road, and it has those small historic parcels with several listed properties that are in the historic Vinland area. And then the airport, again, is adjacent to both N 700 Road and East 1700 Road. Access to this parcel where they're proposing the rezoning would come off of North 700 Road and then proceed through East 1719 Road, because it is at the end of 1719 Road where this parcel exists. So that is the character. It is a mix of the Vinland Village or Vinland residential parcels and agricultural uses primarily to the west and south, or east and south, I'm sorry, and then the airport to the west. And then also as part of the character of this area, we talk about, in environmentally sensitive lands, we talk about those prime farmlands. So I just wanted to put that soils and prime farmland map under this outline of the parcel to show you what exists as far as soils go. This small piece that they are rezoning, the 3.3 piece, does have class 2 soils. That is the orange area, and then there are other prime farmland soils, not class 1, but still classified as prime farmland in that light yellow area. And this, we are zooming in a little bit closer so you can see the layout kind of those parcels and how they lay out in the Vinland village with those smaller and historic structures. And then the airport, the star indicates in the south where the proposed development is to take place, which would be an additional hangar for maintenance of planes or storage of planes and potentially a small office. This is the concept plan that was submitted for the proposed zoning area. And they would continue to use the storage building, and then the new building or new maintenance shop / maintenance area would be the building to the south. Again, this is a review of the review criteria. I do want to point out that this is not the final stop as far as process goes for rezoning. Because that airport use is permitted only via special or conditional use permit in AG2 or LI, they still have to submit with a site plan that conditional use permit application to permit that development to take place on the property, even if it's rezoned. Or if it's not rezoned. So even if this rezoning is not successful and it stays AG2, they still have to go through that public hearing process for the conditional use permit and associated site plan. Again, the reason that staff recommended going through the rezoning is because it unifies the uses across the parcels that are being utilized for that airport use, and it unifies those dimensional standards that would be required for those uses that could potentially develop to support the airport. It also enables them to potentially either modify the CUP for the runway, either expand it, all of which are public hearing processes. So all of these steps that I'm outlining are still public hearings. They come before you, and they go before the Board of County Commissioners for approval. This type of development does not qualify as an administrative site plan review or minor. It doesn't fall into the category of minor. So even if it were a site plan, even if for some reason this was parcel for ag, they're already using it for storage potentially for either ag. I don't know what's in the storage, but it's an ag building, so I'm assuming ag and or storage personal items. But it didn't, in staff's view, rise to the level of a loss of ag land in this particular instance because it's adjacency to the airport and the similar uses that it would be using for the airport. And so staff, I did it again. So staff is recommending approval, staff is recommending approval, and if you consider approving it, then you would send that recommendation on to the Board of County Commissioners. Let me get to the end here. And I would be happy to stand for questions or clarifications if you have them. I'm sure there will be some. If not now, after we have comment, I can answer some more too. Any questions currently?
Is the applicant present?
Yes.
I have a question about access, road access.
Okay.
Light industrial requires access by major thoroughfare, and it sounds like 1719 road is more of a delicate road, a gravel road with historic buildings on it. So can you tell me a little bit more about how the property will be accessed?
Yes. So the code says ideally. So it's ideally located next to like an arterial roadway. It does, however, give dimensional standards and requirements when it is located near any type of road. And so in this case, this access off of 1719 road it's classified as a local road. It kind of dead ends there. There is some concern from the Douglas County Public Works Director, which I put in the staff report, about how some of those issues would be resolved. They may have to improve that road or that entrance to the property. There is also an existing hangar there that has been there for we don't know how long. That is in the right-of-way adjacent to the end of kind of that 1719 road. I think in 21 or 23, there was some communication between the Public Works Director and the county surveyor to look at vacation or vacating a portion of that right-of-way so that it was no longer public right-of-way in that location. And then also the strip, I should probably put the map back up, but the strip behind those parcels that are to the most eastern side, that also was proposed to be vacated. Anytime there's a vacation, half of the vacation typically goes to one side, the property owners, the other half goes to the other side, property owners. So there would be some steps that may need to be taken if approved, and if the CUP or the associated site plans were approved, if they proceed with this. So those are things that the applicant would need to consider when they're doing their development. And yes, it is a small road. It is not necessarily even paved currently to standards for a local road. So there are some access questions that might need to be addressed by the applicant. Anything else? Okay.
Is the applicant here or online?
Good evening, Commissioners. Dean Grove with Grove Engineering. I apologize, somehow I get behind that pillar all the time. But anyway, I think Catherine did a good job of kind of summarizing the project, kind of explaining with some of the pieces that maybe don't fit into any, round peg, square hole thing. When we first started, I wasn't quite sure with the whole rezoning, and as Catherine went through it, that, again, if you get too many parts and pieces, this is AG2 and this is industrial and this piece, that, how do you keep them together? So with that, I said was fine. I think she, again, at the end reiterated that there will be a conditional use permit with a site plan that comes back before this board that will be sent out to the neighbors. So it's, I know was typically with zoning, something gets zoned and there's a whole bunch of uses that can be used in that zoning. And so there's a lot of fear for just open zoning versus with a conditional use permit. It's spelled out exactly what it'll be used for, and any uses besides that would be illegal. And so that was good, and how she explained that. I did read the communications several times, but I know I didn't get them all quite clear, but I know a couple things, and I wanted to explain with the property and the concept plan that you saw, the piece that we're looking to rezone, that is only 125 feet of the right-of-way of the runway, and 250 is required. So from 150 to 250, there's a cross-access easement that takes up another 25 feet of this property that is part of the runway you can't do anything with, but leave it open. You can't build anything there. And from that point back, the FFA requires that there's a taper, and I apologize, I knew what it was, but I can't remember, so many feet horizontal, so many feet vertical. Well, these hangars in the other building are below that level that they, couldn't put a 2-story building up here because the taper that's required away from a airport runway would not allow the height of this building. So, and with that from the 150 foot, to have anything that's over 2 foot high, you have to go out quite a ways. So the development of the west part of the site is really unlikely for that reason, that the FFA dictates what you can and can't put there. So it's not like they could just keep filling up the site with hangars, that don't meet the criteria of FFA. So a couple of things. The property to the west that is south of the existing building, and I think many of you may know that Dave McFarland sold his business to a big conglomerate that has multiple businesses of similar uses, and you might have saw it in the paper. And I don't know what the number was, and I don't care, but the large number of $2 billion that they mentioned was the ownership owning all these different companies, and it came out that Dave got $2.2 billion or $2 billion for this, and that's not accurate, which really doesn't matter. But sometimes you read something and go, really, and that's like, no, that's not quite true. So, and with that, when he sold the property or sold the business, he kept the land ownership with that. With the business he sold, the agreement was that he doesn't then go south of that last building and build something that then doesn't allow this business to enlarge to the south in that property west of the runway. So that's when he looked at, okay, across the runway from that 1719 road, can access that piece over there. And so that's why he chose to go over there, because when they picked up all the other buildings, so there was no other place to put another hangar. Again, this is a private hangar for Dave, and I apologize, I forgot to mention, he's out of town and couldn't make the meeting, but his son Dan is here, so if you would like to know a little more information about the business and that, he can sure answer that, because I know some of the information, but a lot of it I don't, so I'll defer to him if you have questions on that. But so that was one of the things that why developing on the west side to just throw up a hangar wasn't an option, because of their desire to someday expand that business. Now, they're no definite plans, but he just, couldn't mess up the whole project by sticking a hangar over there. There was a couple comments about lighting and something like the ag building. because there was just enough, light on the building over the doors and for safety purposes. And I think for this hangar, it'd be the same thing, because a hangar with a bunch of lighting doesn't do him any good, because the runway's not illuminated. So having a bunch of lighting isn't going to do him any good, because he may be out there working, but not, bringing planes in and out and having a lot of lighting. Again, you'll see all that with the CUP, which I'm ready to submit this evening. I just wanted to kind of get any information from this meeting that if there was something that really sparked somebody's attention, I could address it before I turn it in this evening. Other than that, I think Catherine did a good job of explaining things, at least, for me, which I, seen it a lot, so they were clear to me. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and again, Dan can answer some questions if you'd like to ask him something.
All right, I think we'll go on to public comment, and if the commission has any questions for you, we'll recall you to the stand. Okay. Now we'll move on to public comment on this issue, and this issue only. You will each have 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself, as is the normal procedure, and we'll go to the first person with public comment.
I ask for the first.
He'll just request your,
map.
yep, he'll get it up there. I think it's up.
Which one is this one?
Not the
It's the map.
zoning map, it's the handwritten map. Okay. My name is Kathy DeWiggins. My husband Ray and I live in the Vinland area, and we own historic properties in Vinland that provide affordable housing. And as I reviewed the planning staff report and comments, I found the terminology about the properties to be imprecise, a little bit cloudy, because everything in our experience is not airport. It's kind of a broad term. So I just wanted to review the map by looking at the property ownership. So first, properties 1 and 2 are zoned light industrial, or LI, owned by Land and Sky LC. Property 1 has airport hangars and really is the beginning property for the airport. Property 2 has the McFarland Aviation Manufacturing business. LI zoning requires direct arterial access. Property 1 has arterial access from North 460 Road on the north. Property 2 has arterial access from East 1700 Road on the west. The only way to drive from one property to another is by using the fire lane around the buildings on property 2, unless you go on to the county roads. But neither property is accessible directly from 1719 Road unless one drives across the airport runway. The executive summary suggests the rezoning of property 8 to match the zoning of properties 1 and 2. These properties are physically separated by the runway. The airstrip. The airstrip is on properties 5, 6, and 8, which are zoned agricultural. Property 7 is at the end of 1719 Road. It's a triangle, small property. All are owned by K64 LC. The rezoning proposed for property 8 it's a split zoning request, which I understand is not the usual. And the third point, properties 9 and 10 are owned by Dave and Phyllis McFarland and are zoned agricultural. These properties have frontage on East 1700 Road or North 460 Road. Both are arterial roads. And I suggest that locating a maintenance building and an additional hangar on the west side of the airstrip would consolidate all of the uses associated with the existing airport, which is the stated goal of the proposal. The rezoning would apply uniform zoning across the airport property being utilized for business purposes related to the airport. And just to add a comment on the presentation by the applicant, we had no information about any contractual obligations for the use of that property with the manufacturing, the number 2 with the manufacturing, or anything else on that side of the property. And I say, that's a choice.
That's your time.
I'd like to have the
Panorama.
panorama, please. You had it there for a minute.
Yep, here we go. All right.
That's the one. All right, I'm Paul Cavanis. I'm a retired architect and a historian. I've lived in Vinland for, just outside Vinland for 34 years. And I'd like to take issue with the staff report that I copied offline, which kind of overlooked Vinland. Vinland's not a fading village, it's not a ghost town, it's a living rural community with a quiet, vintage, residential, non-commercial, historic character with family homes and active institutions in its 2 churches and the Cold Creek Library and the Vinland Fair, besides its historic sites. I therefore take exception to the near total exclusion from the online staff report of even a mention of the village of the Vinland or the interests and concerns of its residents. And one of our greatest concerns is the proposed use of 1719 Road as the sole access to the land proposed for rezoning from AG2 to LI Industrial. 1719 Road is an unpaved, local, dead-end township road that happens to be the main road through the village, on which a line of 19th and early 20th century homes and buildings front. The street and streetscape serve to define the historic and picturesque character of the village, character that the planning department's mission statement considers worth preserving and would be compromised, we believe, by the traffic resulting from the proposed industrial use of the property in question, with its attendant noise, dust, and hazards. The historic Grange Hall of 1884 and other period structures built of stone on that road already suffer ongoing damage caused by vibrations from the existing light traffic on 1719 Road. The LI zoning would allow much heavier land uses, potentially causing heavier road use by heavier vehicles. The existing road is substandard and inadequate for such traffic in its construction and width. One of the airfield's multi-hangar structures was built decades ago on the public right-of-way out of the unimproved part of 1719 Road at the south end of the village. Access to the proposed LI industrial lot in question from 1719 Road must pass across the front of these hangars. Therefore, aircraft moving between these hangars and the runway must cross 1719 Road and its traffic to and from the proposed industrial zone. I don't believe an arrangement of taxiways intersecting with county roads exists at any airfield in this county, and I think that this one would set a very unwelcome precedent. Assuming that you will be able to mitigate problems after approval of a potentially problematic proposal, does not sound like planning to me.
Paul.
It's reacting.
Paul, you've reached your time limit.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Could we please bring up the GIS map that shows the parcels from East 1700 Road over to East 1750 and south of North 700 Road?
I don't actually know how to use the map, but Catherine's done that.
And then also with the zoning overlay.
It's on the screen right
Zoning is on. How far over do you want?
East 1700 to East 1750.
Okay, so that is what's up now.
Can we zoom it in?
Don't.
Not quite that?
It will not let me.
Then let's take it back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for serving on the commission. My name is PJ Adams, and I live and own property in Vinland that is at the dead end of East 1719 Road. That road does terminate at the shared property line of Palmyra Township and K64LC. It does not extend south of that property line. it terminates in a dead end. I would like to direct your attention to page 8 of your packets under the staff finding. Now, this states the proposed use is currently permitted on most of the parcel at 694 East 1700 Road, which you can see on this GIS map. That is that large trapezoidal purple LI zoned area. East 1700 Road, as we've heard, is an arterial road. The code states that access, not ideally access to an arterial road is a requirement for limited industrial zoned districts. It is therefore logical and prudent to keep limited industrial in an area that has appropriate road access. On page 10 of your packets, point 9 requests the applicant's response to any hardship imposed upon the landowner if the application is denied. The applicant's response: additional hangar space is needed for continued viable use of the airport. Again, looking at our map, space for constructing additional hangars already exists on land west of the airstrip that is owned by the landowner and is already appropriately zoned as limited industrial, and the land, as we have heard, has access to arterial roads at 3 points. Under that same point, the report states impacts such as traffic and street improvements could be mitigated through the review of future development applications. This is not planning. This is an assumption that mitigation of impact would be possible, that it could occur. Now, that's an assumption made with no assessment and no plan. Relying on assumptions to make zoning decisions sets a dangerous precedent. Any future airport activity can continue to occur west of the airstrip without detriment to the landowner. The logical and appropriate course of action is a conditional use permit review. That is the next step in this process, not rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. If we could pull up that same map that we just had, the GIS map that shows the same area, please. Am I allowed to operate this map at all? Because I would like to zoom in.
I can't guarantee it'll work.
I got it. We're good. Okay. Hi, my name's Phaedra Mitchell, and I am a 29-year resident of Vinland, the village, which is up here. And I live, for the last 27 years, I have lived on 1719 Road, which lives right next door to PJ, essentially. So I would like to bring your attention to the fact that there is well, let me do this first. So this land here, this is all airport. This is the airport. Okay. You can get out of that now. So what you see, that yellow, looks like a square at the top with the airstrip all the way down. That is what is considered airport and is owned by K64. If there's one thing I would really like you all to remember as you're going through all this in your decision making, there has never been any permitted airport activity or business east of that airstrip on these Ag 2 lands since 1968, when the first conditional use permit was established for the airport. So this would be setting a precedent. We have to the east, or to the west of the airstrip, we have light industrial land zoned, which has hangars on it. It has an industrial park with related businesses, and it has a lot of vacant land all the way down here that could be used for that purpose, already zoned, light industrial, okay? So from where I'm standing, the partial rezoning request is not necessary in any way for the airport to continue its operations as it always has. It seems premature to do this, given that the least harmful means to bring the airport up to code is a conditional use permit. I feel like we're jumping ahead to this part before we've done the conditional use permit. The applicant can still take access via the terminus of our dead-end road for access to his farm shed. And whatever else he wants to build can be built in the appropriate zoning across the airstrip to the west. Doing this precedent to take access over here is just going to give permission for additional light industrial projects to occur. It's the gate. This is the open gate to light industrial progress in my town. So I thank you for your time. For these reasons, I would ask you to say no at this time to the partial zoning request, and we'll go to a conditional use permit review. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I don't need any visual aids. I am a visual aid. I like to introduce myself. My name is Cotter Mitchell. I am a 35-year resident with a 65-year history going back to my childhood of the village of Vinland, Kansas. The last 27 of those years, I've been a property owner and resident of the dead-end county road, 1719 road. Respectfully, the Planning Commission report that was made available on June 16th reads to me as if it was written solely by the applicant. So many misrepresentations, inaccuracies, and language tailored to color the reality of the requested rezoning. I can illustrate that by one, which is the co-opting an extension of 1719 road by the applicant and giving himself a street address. It doesn't exist. It's a dead-end road. So until this meeting, this evening, never was a historically rich village of Vinland that would be the access point to this rezoning request mentioned by the applicant or the planning staff. The written input from Vinland residents and benefactors was included in the packet, but clearly not taken into consideration. As a member of the applicant described strong, welcoming neighborhood, and a long-term resident and property owner of the applicant described ghost town, I strongly object to this request on behalf of the past founders and residents, the current 11 full-time residents, the larger community that has worked so hard to maintain a historic nature of this small treasure, and all future beneficiaries of this place. I would ask the planners to deny this rezoning request and, in the future, apply their own guidelines and hear the voice of a small but vibrant community with the same validity as a mega-dollar venture and come to a fair and impartial conclusion. The precedent set by approving this request will just open the floodgates to potentially unchecked rural commercial development. Thank you very much for my opportunity to speak to this matter.
Thank you.
My name is Ray Wilbur, property owner in Vinland. My wife Kathy and I came to Vinland community in 1972 and were soon involved with the village of Vinland, its Coal Creek Library, and the Grange Fair. The landowner that is proposing this change has received praise and respect for his business that he has built. We believe Vinland residents and property owners also deserve equal praise and respect for their work to preserve and protect a historic community, not just for themselves, but for the future. Kathy and I have been a part of this work as craftsmen, property owners, and members of community organizations that have preserved 4 buildings now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Over the years, we have seen how area residents and visitors from outside this area appreciate and value the Vinland community as a fine example of a historic rural Midwestern town. We express our support for the 240 plan, recognizing the importance of protecting historic resources, and we urge you to reject this zoning proposal, which will do much to degrade the historic resources of Vinland and Douglas County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Swindell. I'm a 39-year resident of Vinland and on 1719 Road. I have a native rock building that was at one time the Vinland Mart. Prior to that, it was the Farmers Cooperative. I've repurposed this building over time for an art studio and for my home. What I'd like to do is just bring a kind of face and a little bit more color to the community and talk about the people that live there. Most of them are present tonight. So the collective number of years that represent our living there and our renovation and our restoration of this community is about 450 years. In the village of community of Vinland, we have a preservationist, a graphic designer, an artist, a sign maker and neon artist, 2 carpenters, a stonemason, a craftsman and musician, a social worker, an architect, a dental hygienist, a sculptor, and 2 college educators. So varied skill sets, and the thing that unifies all of us is our love for the community and for the history of the community. We've maintained that vigilantly over all of this time. Our concern today is that this 40 to 50 year period that we have invested in the community, that it not be in some way affected by this change in the zoning. We would like to think that our purpose is to really think about the next stewards and the next 50 years going forward. And this seems to be an open question about what is potentially possible for this rezoning in this property. We're also very, very concerned about the delicate nature of 1719 Road because of the very close backset on the properties. Thank you very much for your time, and we would welcome a visit from any of you. The Coal Creek Library is open on Sundays, and I think just a drive through the village would be very meaningful for all of you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Do we have anyone online?
No, I'm not seeing anyone online indicating they wish to speak.
All right, last chance, anyone else in the room for public comment? We'll go back to the applicant for any response to the public comments.
Again, Dean Grove with Grove Engineering. No, I hear their concerns. I think the one thing is that the road in question is a county township road and is maintained by them. There was some comment from the county engineer because it does just dead into the property in the not in the concept plan, but in the county website. You can see that he's provided a hammerhead turnaround because I think maybe there's some concerns about fire and medical being able to turn around, when they get to the end of that road. There'll be some things to get resolved with the conditional use permit, but I think we can get over them Again, I think the biggest thing is, with the construction, I'm thinking about the, footing, piers, slab, the structure of the building, we're probably looking at, somewhere between 30 and 50 truckloads for everything that might be included. There would be some, I can't say there wouldn't be traffic during construction, but I think the fact that the end use of a, privately owned hangar, that he's going to, to have his airplane down there, and would be surprised if there's 1 trip a day or 2 trips a day, and, could be 3 or 4 on any given day, but that the end use would not, see multiple trips a day up and down that road. There's things we can look at for during construction. We can put up some signage, but again, it is a public road, to try and slow construction traffic down, or some other things that we can talk about with a conditional use permit, from as far as that goes. But I think we can address concerns at that point. Again, it's more where you talk about the meat and potatoes of how it happens versus the rezoning for its use. Again, as I mentioned, I was trying to explain between the runway width and the tapered setback, that this 3.3 acres is probably in the neighborhood of 2 acres, that really can be developed because of the FAA restrictions on it. So, I think the fear of, they can come in and do something completely different and, not be what we say is going on here, that with the conditional use permit, I believe those usually get, and that's the purpose for those, that all those loose items get tied up, so the neighbors and everyone feels a little more comfortable about the process and what's going in on a site versus just a normal zoning. So again, you'll see that in 2 months from tonight for the conditional use permit, and I'll answer any other questions if I've not provided something clearly or you have other questions.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Not right now.
Not right now, okay. All right, we'll get back to you. And with that, we'll.
Thank you for your time, commissioners, and the planning office for the time they put in this, and everybody here from the community that came. I'm Dan McFarland, son of Dave McFarland. He apologizes for not being able to be here. He had some unplanned travel that he couldn't make it. But I just want to just reiterate that our original intention with this was never for the expansive permissive use of that comes with light industrial. Our initial intention was, okay, let's just leave it ag and roll in the conditional use permit. But I understand the desire for uniformity from the planning department on bringing it into light industrial. But we will do everything we can to make sure the conditional use permit limits it to the use that we are proposing here. And this will be a place where I will travel there from time to time, because I will have office space at that facility too. That'll be at part-time. And that's all. I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, back to the commission for discussion. Who wants to lead us off?
I've got a couple of questions, if I could ask those. For staff, I think, to start, 2 questions. First one, did we get anything at all from Baldwin on this, other than, hey, we don't have a problem?
No. We just have the email correspondence that was added to the packet from the city of Baldwin.
There wasn't any discussion of concerns or representing the...
No, I think I quoted specifically what they had said in the staff report, that they did not have issues with the rezoning, and then I included the email in the packet. So
okay, thank you. Could I dig in a little bit into the CUP? Do I understand that the applicant could do what they want to do with the CUP and AG2?
Yeah, and so I think the reason, the reason staff recommended the rezoning is because this is not just a hangar. Like, it's not just a personal store. I mean, they will have a small maintenance shop as the proposal for the personal planes, and potentially an office. So I think if it wasn't all of those things, staff may have just said, yeah, you should probably just pursue the CUP. But because there is other supporting elements that tie into the airport, potentially planes coming over for small maintenance or office related to the airport use, that kind of lumps it all into that airport private or public use. And since that is already happening in the LI district, it seemed logical to have that under the same zoning designation for that.
But just want to be clear that
Yes,
it is
they-
allowed in AG2. All those
can,
uses are allowed in AG2.
They can proceed, if this rezoning is not successful, they can proceed with just a CUP application in the AG2 district.
Gotcha.
And they still, even if the rezoning is successful, also have to submit that CUP for the LI district.
Understood,
So-
understood. The remarkable difference between those two conditions for me, though, is that once it's LI, it runs with the land. And if that use would change, then anything inside that LI use table could happen once the CUP expires, right? So the exposure's there. That's,
Yeah,
I
if
guess,
it
the
is
concern
not
I've
a
got.
use that is only permitted by CUP, and as the applicant has explained, many of those uses that are listed in that LI district are inherently not viable just because of the FAA regulations and how you have to design your runway and the space around it.
Yeah.
So, but yes, there are uses that are inherently permitted in the LI district. That being said, those uses are currently already all permitted on the larger LI parcel where the aviation businesses
Right.
are residing.
Right.
So the potential is already there, which is why staff thought to unify
Right.
and create the same district.
So just one more question, I think. If for some reason this, the rezoning was approved, what is the process by which the roads would be evaluated and brought up to the standard required by LI zoning?
Yeah, so that is unfortunately a question outside of my scope, but would be a question more for the county director of public works. There were discussions in the past of potentially, like as I mentioned, it dead ends kind of at the property line, and there is an existing long hangar that's already in use that exists on that right of way. It is county right of way. It's classified as a local road. There was discussion of vacation of a portion of that, and then potentially with that vacation, they may have to do some improvement where, they're either to the property from 700 Road or from their entrance to that. That would be something that would have to be worked out during that CUP and site plan review
Gotcha.
with the county public works.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that. If I could just conclude, just a comment. I certainly support Vinland Airport and the business that's going out there and growing. It's important for that area. It's important for Douglas County. I do have concerns, though, about LI jumping that runway, which kind of acts as a buffer. I worry about that the change in zoning is it's such a permanent change to accommodate a business use request that could be done without exposing the Vinland community to some potential unknowns down the road. So I'd probably be inclined at this point to say I would deny the request for rezoning, but really encourage the applicant to go down an AG2 CUP process. Just sharing those thoughts.
And I thought Andy's question to start out with, it doesn't say, or I didn't understand it to be, ideally, it would have to be an arterial road getting back in there. What does the township say? It is a township road.
We did not get comment from the township regarding the road.
Did you reach out to the township?
Yes, they do get notified of all applications, the township. They did not get notified.
We do not get notice. We got 20 days notice. That's it.
They should be on the notification list for applications.
We are outside of the 3-mile radius of Baldwin City. We don't get notification.
I was asking about township notifications, the folks that would take care of the roads.
I got you.
Um,
Sorry, I misunderstood.
And this question to staff, would the concern, let's, whether it gets, we approve or we don't approve tonight, and we move on to a CUP if that happens, would typically concern over the roads, a discussion with the township over the roads for either getting them up to whatever the standard might be, and then maintenance, because they have to take that on, and they're not exactly busting with money like most of the townships. Does that typically happen now at a rezoning request, or would that typically happen at the CUP, or is it both?
It will just really depend on sometimes the township and what's ultimately proposed. It's, when you rezone something, you're not approving a single use, you're approving a suite of uses. So some uses may require a different agreement than what other uses may require. And the county code stipulates when certain things may get triggered for use number 1, but not use number 2. Really, it's when you get down to the conditional use permit or the site planning process, because then you have a little bit more of an understanding about traffic volumes, the vehicles that'll be coming and going, the fire and medical needs that may be potentially there. And I don't think I will shock anybody that a fire truck carrying water weighs a lot more than a lot of semi-truck traffic will do. So that can really dictate about what the roads will start to look like. So that's really when we have those conversations, because you could approve something for rezoning and it be a very light use potentially, or you could approve a rezoning and it be a very potentially heavy use. There's no guarantee at this stage. Like you have with a conditional use permit, you typically have a known end user with a known configuration and a site parameter that you'd be talking about. So it can happen at both.
Okay.
I have a question for staff. Catherine, when you were looking at Plan 2040, did you look at the historic resources section? I didn't find it mentioned in the staff report, and I was curious as to why that was the case.
I did look at it. I tried to focus on the character for the Vinland. Yes, I did look at it. There are several nationally listed properties there. There are not environs for nationally listed property like we have in Lawrence, where there's a local environs review. Any national or state listed property, if they're listed in the state also, I believe the state office would, like during a site plan review, we would reach out to those entities to see if there's any comment or any, I think they like to use the language, damage or potential for damage to the historically listed properties. So that would be the opportunity to include that. But definitely preserving historic elements of our community is a goal that's in the comprehensive plan. I probably should have added that comment, but yes.
So that those historic resources would be considered as part of the conditional use permit? Is
Correct.
That, yeah. Whether it is an AG2 or LI?
Correct. Yes. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I also had a question for the applicant. I think perhaps Mr. McFarland would be the appropriate person to ask. In the staff report, it says, quoting the applicant's response, that the additional hangar space is needed for continued viable use of the airport, whereas I thought I understood Mr. Grove to say that the hangar that was needed was for your father's own hangar.
It is for personal use. I think there might have been some misstatement of that, or.
So it's not really necessary for the operation of the airport, but it would be necessary.
Well, it's.
Father's.
It is going to be for personal use at this stage, yes.
Thank you very much. The other thing I was curious about as to whether the staff had any examples of airport runways that would be crossed over by airport uses?
No, I do not have examples. We only have 2 airports that operate currently in Douglas County. That's the Vinland Airport and the city's municipal airport. There are airport uses that would have to maybe taxi across the runway for, if this is a maintenance shop, to obviously repair the plane. But don't have examples to compare to in Douglas County where traffic would, on a regular basis, cross over. It's not a large regional airport or a large airport where that taxiing typically takes place across different parcels or airport runways, so.
That's all governed, I think,
Jeff
by
wanted to say
FAA.
something.
Is it all governed by FAA?
Yeah, I was about to say, there's a lot of things that are set by the FAA depending upon different airport types and configurations, and that's about the extent of my knowledge, and I don't know much more beyond that, honestly.
It's completely governed by the FAA.
So
There's some
would-
conditions where it exists.
Would any of those concern, specifically the crossing of the public road, assuming that it is covered by the FAA, not FFA, would that be covered in the CUP?
Yes, so that's where the function of that road and how access is taken to that property. I don't think it's anticipated that anything from the hangar would have to cross the road. What would be traveled from the road would be people who are either going to the hangar to retrieve their plane or working in the office. That is the individuals that would be traveling down the road. The planes are not anticipated to, and the applicant can, I'm sure, elaborate on this, are not anticipated to have to taxi on any roadway. And
No,
that
they have
is...
to taxi across the road.
Or across the roadway. They shouldn't have to do that because the runway is adjacent to that parcel itself. And that is something that would be looked at through that CUP process, and I think that is where, the county public works director included those, concerns about how to resolve where that right-of-way ends, where the property is taking access from, and how that existing non-conforming hangar that is currently situated in the right-of-way, how does that resolve itself? And I think the CUP would be the tool to kind of work all of those things out.
Because any planes current in that existing hangar, to get to the runway, they have to cross the road today, let alone anything.
So technically, yes. However, nothing should be on that area of the roadway that relates to Vinland. That is directly in front of that hangar. But yes, that is the conflict that is currently existing on the property now. And I think that is a comment that the county public works director brought up about how we would have to take a look at how to resolve that in the future.
I would go along with Commissioner Rexroad on, I have difficulty thinking why we would change the zoning at this point when we're going to have a CUP. If we change the zoning, again, it goes with the property. It is a forever, unless somebody comes back and changes it back again, when the things that can be asked for could be accomplished without changing the zoning. I fail to understand why we would change the zoning then. That you can bring a CUP to us, and you said 2 months, we're going to have a CUP. So I don't know why we would change the zoning at this point. So I'll just say, I don't know why we'd change the zoning.
Go ahead.
Well, I certainly agree with Commissioner Thomas. I think that the Vinland Airport is really important, and I think it's important that they can go ahead and have the hangar space they need. And I'm delighted that they can accomplish that in their existing zoning. I think that's really good news. And I also think that all of these lovely people from Vinland have such a gem, and it is something that needs to be protected and preserved. And I think you've done a phenomenal job without all the help from Lawrence that you might have had, even if you wanted it. And so I think it's really a happy experience having everybody come together and appreciate the importance of the airport and the importance to make that business viable and the importance of the historic area in Vinland that we have and continue to maintain that. And all of that can be handled with the CUP along with the questions that we haven't gotten to yet. And I guess I'm ready to not support this.
Before we talk about a motion, Commissioner online, Mr. Barrero, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I guess the only question I might have, it's just to, for my own understanding and just to make sure that I have a question for staff. And the question is that there is nothing preventing, is there anything preventing the applicant from constructing the proposed hangar under the existing AG2 zoning with a conditional use permit?
No, they could do that with the conditional use permit.
With that, then yes, I agree with Commissioner Rexroth that at the end of the day, I think this would be the best route other than doing the rezoning.
And I think we have one other commissioner online as well. Any questions or comments?
Nothing from me.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I'd make a motion.
I would accept one.
I move that we deny the request for rezoning Z-26-0036 at 674 East 1719 Road and forward that recommendation of denial to the Board of County Commissioners.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Eldridge. Any further discussion?
I'd like to make just one comment. I do want to encourage, and I hope that Vinland Airport does come back with a CUP request in AG2, and assuming everything's consistent with what I've heard tonight, I'd be eager to support that with them.
And more comments from me. I'd encourage all of you. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care. Keep following the process all the way through, because the process is not over. More than likely, we'll see a CUP, and we'll be back here again to talk the positives and negatives, whatever they may or may not be. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, raise your right hand. And all opposed, same sign. So it'd be 8-1 to deny. With that, I got to get my wording correct.
Wouldn't it be 9-1?
We will adjourn the joint meeting with the Baldwin City Planning Commission
1, 2, 3, 4.
and convene a joint meeting with the Eudora Planning Commission.
Oh,
and
left.
I am going to leave the room and leave it to Commissioner Munch. Take over.
Very good. Thank you, Chair. So we are now considering approving a conditional use permit UP 25-0008 for a small-scale industrial use at 1093 East 2400 Road. To lead us through this is Drew Bealby. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Drew Bealby. I am a planner with the Planning and Development Services Department. As mentioned, this is a conditional use permit, project number UP 250008. This is for a proposed small-scale industrial use. The applicant, this is an existing use as it is. The applicant performs repairs on vehicles in their existing 3,000 square foot building on the site. There is no intensification of the use proposed. They are just coming into compliance with county code. This was kind of found when the county was doing some compliance research, they found this use occurring here, and they got in contact with the applicant to come into code compliance. So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for this. I'll just kind of lean heavily on my staff report. I will go through the conditional use permit review criteria for you. So first review criteria is that the proposed use complies with the applicable provisions in the county zoning code. So there are quite a bit of specific use standards. I addressed those by numbers in the staff report. I'm happy to go through any of those specifically more in detail if you have questions about those standards. But just know that this proposed use does comply with those use standards. Second is if the use is compatible with the zoning and uses of nearby properties. As mentioned, this use is existing currently. It has been since around 2024 or 2022, sorry. There are no changes proposed. The impact would remain the same as it is existing today. The proposed hours of operation from the applicant are 8:15 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So staff has determined that this use is compatible with the zoning and uses of nearby properties. The third criteria is the use is compatible with the character of the nearby area. The zoning nearby is AG1 and AG2. All of the uses fall under the agriculture use or residential uses. Again, there are no changes with this site's existing use right now. So staff has determined that it is compatible with the character as well. Number 4 is the suitability of the subject property for this use. Again, since this use is existing and no changes are proposed, and that the use is allowed via a CUP in the county code, staff is supporting the suitability of the property. Number 5 is the adverse impacts, if any, on the natural environment. I did note that there are some soils on this land. They are not considered prime farmland by code. I will note that the CUP use does not preclude agriculture uses on the site in a future time, and that this site has existed in its existing layout since around 1981. So for that reason, staff does not find that this will have adverse impacts on the natural environment. Number 6 is the impact on community facilities. This is mostly due on infrastructure. Again, staff has maintained that there is low impact on the community facilities. The road that this is on, East 2400 Road, is maintained by Johnson County. I reached out to the Johnson County Public Works Office. They did not have any issues with this use as it has been existing. They weren't really aware of it, but they didn't have any problems with it. So for that reason, staff is supporting this use and finds it will not increase impact on the community facilities. Number 7 is the conformance with comprehensive plan or sector plans. This area is not part of any sector plans, and it is not within the urban growth area. The comprehensive plan doesn't really address CUPs, but it does mention that industrial uses should be compatible with the nearby areas. As mentioned, staff does believe that this is a compatible use for the nearby areas. The impact should be low as there are no new expansions proposed. Number 8 is the limit on time and or hours of operation. As standard with most CUPs, staff is proposing a 10-year time limit on the use or the conditional use permit with a 5-year review by the county zoning staff for compliance. After that 10-year time limit, if they wanted to continue use, they would need to reapply for a conditional use permit. Staff is not indicating any hours of operations limits proposed, but the commission may suggest hours of operation if they deem that that would be required. So finally, we move on to the professional staff recommendation. Staff is recommending to forward this conditional use permit with a recommendation of approval to the Board of County Commissions. That is about it for my notes. I don't believe I see the applicant. I know that they were on vacation, and I told them that they should probably not interrupt their vacation. As this got pushed to this month, it was supposed to go last month. So applicant's not present, but I am happy to answer any questions if you have some for staff. So thank you.
Very good. Any questions for Drew?
I don't have, it seems like pretty clean up.
Agreed. Drew, you mentioned at the top of your comments how this issue arose, but can you clarify, were there any complaints associated with this use? Were there any calls to the zoning department associated with this, or was this normal course, just checking up on things, and that's how it came to light?
Yes, so there wasn't a complaint. It was, so Douglas County keeps a record of just kind of any public comments that they get. They got a comment from someone just wondering if the automotive repair that was happening there was a permitted use. So Douglas County reached out to them saying, automotive repair is not a permitted use. You need to seek a CUP for this use. So that's when they immediately applied for this. They've been working with code compliance the whole time. So it wasn't really anything out of compliance. It was more so just it got raised to Douglas County, and they said go through this process so they don't end up getting any violations in the future.
Okay. Very good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Drew, when I drove by, it would have been, I guess, the northwest. It looked like way back on the property there were some vehicles. And I tried to figure that out with the hand drawing that we had as part of the staff report. And is that the parking block that shows up on the hand drawing, or is that a separate?
So yes, so the parking block that is shown on the plan is towards what you would consider the front of the property, basically facing East 2400 Road. They have that kind of basically between the right-of-way and the building, and then they have some on the north side of the building too. The area behind the building, they have their own, there's like a personal shed too back there, and those are their own personal vehicles. Part of this CUP was getting them to kind of get that organized. And so on that drawn site plan, you see the personal use area. That is kind of open storage for their personal vehicles that they can use. There is a specific standard that for these small scale industrial uses, outdoor storage of equipment and materials is not permitted. So that's kind of why they called that out, so that if code compliance did go there, they would have to be sure that it was just personal use items, not items associated with this use. So I think with this CUP, I think we're gonna get that cleaned up to make sure that it's only personal use items in that area.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before we go further, is there anybody from the general public here to comment on this particular agenda item, either in the room or online?
Doesn't appear to be anyone in the room or online.
Very good. Thank you. With that, bring it back to
Generally supportive. There's just one comment I'd make for Drew. On page 4, criteria 9, the sentence appears to be truncated. I'm sure it's just a miss, but you might want to complete that just for the final version that goes into the record.
Yeah, I saw that too. I think it might have gotten broken in translation between uploading it. So.
Yeah, no big deal, but I'd be happy to support this for sure.
Any other questions or comments or discussion from the commission?
I'd make a motion for approval, subject to the findings in the staff report and the conditions in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Very good. With that, all of those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? It appears to be unanimous. That is approved. Thank you. I'll do the work of adjourning the joint meeting of the with the Eudora Planning Commission and reconvening the Orange Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Commission.
I didn't ask. Was anybody from Eudora here?
Apparently not.
I didn't ask.
All you, Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Did we have any input from Eudora? I don't think we did.
On to item number 3, for a conditional use permit.
Okay. Thank you for pulling that up, Kurt. I appreciate that. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Avery Kerner, and I am a planner with the City County Planning Office. And this next item before you is for a conditional use permit application for the heavy equipment storage use at 1691 East 902 Road. The subject property is located in the county near the northwest corner of Lawrence and is bounded by the city limits to the east and the K-10 highway to the west. The property is in Tier 2 of the city's urban growth area, so there's a mix of county and city zoning in this area. The property itself is zoned AG2, and the proposed heavy equipment storage use is permitted in the AG2 district with an approved conditional use permit. The areas to the north and west of the subject property are in the unincorporated part of the county, and parcels in these areas are primarily zoned AG1, AG2, and CP which is the Cluster Preservation District. And then just north of the property, there is also a small light industrial district in purple. The areas to the east and south of the subject property are inside the city limits and include the P1 district, which is the civic and institutional district, the P2 district, which is the open space district, which also includes a floodplain overlay district in this pink hatched area. And then to the south is the CC district, which is the commercial center district. And then it is hatched in red to indicate that there were conditions placed on the rezoning application whenever the rezoning ordinance was adopted. Again, because the property's location, uses in this area include a mix of rural and urban uses. The property is currently permitted for use as a rural residence, which is reflected in yellow. There are 3 buildings on the property, and the existing dwelling unit is in the north building on the property. Rural properties to the north and west are predominantly used for agriculture and residential purposes. And then immediately north of the property, there is a vacant parcel that's indicated in this darker gray color on screen, and that is the parcel that is zoned LI for light industrial in the county. And then these 2 parcels that are in the lighter gray color are developed with the Baldwin Creek substation, and that is considered the major utilities use. The area to the east of the property is the location of Rock Chalk Park, which includes a mix of open space, recreation, and entertainment, spectator sports uses. And then south is the Mercado mixed-use development, which also has a mix of uses, which including a hotel and then medical office for the Lawrence Memorial Hospital West Campus. And then recently there were plans approved for a new Costco store in this area, which would be considered a retail use. This is the proposed site plan for the use. On the left side of the screen is a view of the overall site plan for the site. And then on the right hand side of the screen is a close-up of the east side of the property, which is where the use and proposed improvements would be located on site. With this plan, all 3 buildings would be kept on site and used for the heavy equipment storage use. There would also be outdoor storage of equipment in the area behind the buildings and then a little bit to the south of the buildings. The outdoor storage area would be enclosed with a 6-foot tall chain link fence, and the fence would include barbed wire and screening material. The application materials didn't specify the exact type of screening material that would be used with the chain link fence, so this is something that staff has requested that the applicant provide a little bit of clarification on, and then to submit revised plans that label that specific material that's proposed. And then this change to the plan is included as one of the recommended conditions of approval from staff. The plan shows 2 parking spaces at the front of each building, and with this plan, 2 of the existing 4 vehicle entrances would be closed along East 902 Road, and then a new gravel drive would be provided on site to provide internal circulation between the buildings and parking spaces. And then there are just a few items I'd like to touch base on before we walk through the review criteria. The first item is, again, that the heavy equipment storage use is permitted in the AG2 district with an approved conditional use permit. And then as a reminder, conditional use permits are a discretionary approval process that require a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And then the Board of County Commissioners is the body responsible for making a final decision on whether to approve the conditional use permit. The third item is that this conditional use permit, if approved, would replace the existing detached dwelling use on the site. And this is something I just wanted to clarify because the initial application had originally proposed maintaining the existing dwelling unit, but that dwelling unit has since been removed from the plans. And then the last item I wanted to touch base on is that if the conditional use permit is approved, a building permit for a change of use and occupancy would need to be obtained from the County Zoning and Codes Office before the buildings would be or could be used for the heavy equipment storage use. These are the review criteria that are used to evaluate conditional use permit applications. The first criterion looks at the uses compliance with the zoning regulations, and staff's finding is that the proposed use complies with the county zoning regulations and the applicable use-specific standards for the heavy equipment storage use. However, there are still a handful of changes that should be made to the site plan associated with this conditional use permit, such as labeling the specific screening material that would be used on the chain link fence. And so one of the recommended conditions of approval is the provision of a revised site plan with a list of changes, and those changes are listed at the top of the staff report. The second criterion looks at compatibility of the use with the zoning and use of nearby property. And staff is of the opinion that the proposed use would be compatible with the rural and urban zoning and land uses in this area. The third criterion looks at the compatibility of the use with the character of the area. And again, staff is of the opinion that the proposed use would fit within the current character of this area, but that could change over time as the area surrounding the property is annexed and is developed to urban standards. The fourth criterion looks at the property's suitability for the uses it's currently restricted to. And staff's finding for this criteria is the property is suitable for the uses permitted in the AG2 district. And that does include the proposed heavy equipment storage use, as long as it's approved with a conditional use permit. The fifth criterion looks at whether the use will adversely impact the natural environment. And staff's finding is that the proposed use will not cause significant adverse impact to the natural environment. On page 9 of the staff report, there are 2 maps that show the environmentally sensitive lands on the property and within the area. There is Class 2 high-quality agricultural soil on the west side of the property. The property is also situated between the floodplain and the riparian corridor of the Baldwin Creek and South Branch Baldwin Creek. The proposed use would take place on the east side of the property, which would leave the Class 2 soils undisturbed. And then the nearby floodplain and riparian corridors should be unaffected since there's no increase in impervious surface proposed for the site with this project. The sixth criterion is whether the use would or will adversely impact community facilities, the transportation network, or utilities in the area. And staff's finding is that the use will not impact any of these items or adversely impact any of these items. The use does not propose or require any changes to East 902 Road or the planned transportation network for the area. The property owner plans to continue using the existing septic system and the storage tank for potable water that are already on the site. The seventh criterion looks at whether the use conforms with the comprehensive plan or the other adopted land use plans for the area. So again, this property is located in Tier 2 of Lawrence's urban growth area. Plan 2040 requires annexation prior to development for property in Tier 2 when city services are reasonably available. In this case, city services are available in the area, but extension of those services to the property would have to be completed by the developer and financed by the developer. Because city services aren't required or being requested for this project, annexation into the city isn't necessary at this time. With that being said, Plan 2040 does say that rural development in Tier 2 which aren't annexed into the city should enter into an agreement not to protest future annexation. So executing an agreement not to protest is included as one of the recommended conditions of approval from staff. And then this property is also in the planning area of the K-10 and Farmers Turnpike Plan. The plan designates the property for future residential and office uses, and this is for after the property has been annexed. The proposed heavy equipment storage use is categorized as an industrial use in the permitted use table. And that use doesn't align with the future land use recommendations of the plan. However, staff is of the opinion that while the use doesn't align with the land use plan's future land use recommendations, the conditional use permit is proposing relatively minor changes to the site, which shouldn't prevent future redevelopment of the property in conformance with the future land use recommendation and policies of the adopted plan once it's been annexed. The eighth criterion looks at whether it would be appropriate to place a time limit on the use. And in this case, staff is recommending placing a time limit on the conditional use permit since the property is in Tier 2 of the city's urban growth area and because the use doesn't align with the future land use recommendation within the adopted area plan. So staff is recommending a 5-year time limit for the conditional use permit with administrative review of the use for compliance after the first 2 years. And this time limit would help ensure that the use can be reevaluated for compatibility with the area as the area continues to annex and develop to urban standards. And then the last criterion is staff's recommendation. And that recommendation is for approval of the conditional use permit application and forwarding the item to the Board of County Commissioners with a recommendation of approval based on the findings in the staff report and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Avery?
Not yet.
Okay.
Sorry, Kirk, I think I messed it up.
Don't tell me
Bye.
we're queuing up Paul's stuff.
I hope so. I saw it earlier.
Did you have,
Yeah,
is,
it's here, I think.
is it a PDF or?
It's a PDF.
Oh, my.
Oh, here it is. Is this
That's
it?
not, that's Finland.
Oh.
It was running before.
Oh, no, I'm on the wrong computer. Hold on a second. It's there.
Item number 3.
It's there. Is that
Oh,
what
here we
it is?
go.
Okay.
There it is.
Got it.
Awesome.
We're going to share Zoom so everyone will love it.
Awesome. There it was.
It's one computer per item.
All right, we'll figure this out.
That's you.
Paul Warner Architects, good evening. The owner of the excavation company, George Grieve, is also here if you have any questions for the owner. We appreciate everybody's help on this. Avery and I have been through this for a little while. Our client wanted to make sure he'd been renting the space for a long time, several years, and once he bought it almost 2 years ago, we wanted to get everything in compliance, and we wanted to do some exterior storage. And working with planning, we came up with the CUP. In our minds, this is actually a perfect CUP. This is exactly what it's made for. As Avery said, there are currently 3 buildings on the site, all of which were constructed by the previous property owner, who pulled a permit for each one of them, but under the accessory structures designations. The current owner and client would like to use the property for exterior storage. Like I said, this started about 2 years ago, and that's no fault of the city or the county. It's a little bit on us. A few months ago, you saw a self-storage just north of this, and we wanted to wait and see how that played out because everybody was worried about the road and the improvements. And as you can tell from the shape of the lot, my client would be severely penalized by the road frontage that he owns compared to the self-storage. And certainly the self-storage traffic just was monumentally more than what we're creating. So we wanted to wait, see how that played out, and that's why we're here before you tonight. The excavation company operating off the site has 4 to 6 employees that come and pick up the equipment in the mornings, go off and perform their work, bring the equipment back at the end of the day, and leave their personal vehicles. There's no maintenance of vehicles or any work actually performed on the site. It is strictly for the storage and parking purposes. We are in agreement with most of the conditions that Avery has written, but we want to clarify a few things. So let's see. Said working with Chad Voigt, the one thing he did request, as already mentioned, is right now there's 4 curb cuts, and we're taking that down to 2. Eliminating 2 and making that work. So one thing that Avery and I have gone back and forth on is, as she mentions, material. And we're the first to admit there's no desire to store any material that has nothing to do with the excavation company. For instance, in this picture, you can see conduits, and I would have sent these to you earlier if I'd got the staff report earlier. But so in our minds, a big role of conduit, this is exactly what their company does. It's a boring company, and so the conduits are on trailers and go out to the field and come back. So in our minds, that material is, goes along with the use of why they are there. So we have rewritten some of the conditions. There should be another sheet.
It's exactly the same as this one.
Really? Okay. So I'll talk you through this. So the first one, the owner's willing to sign an agreement not to protest the annexation. We realized that we have to apply for a building permit. We would have worked on that by now, but we weren't quite sure how the CUP was going to go. 3 is acceptable as written. So 4, the time limit. I know the last 2 that I was here, and I think the 3rd one, have all been approved for 10 years with a 5-year administration review. I think you just did one earlier tonight with the same conditions. So we would ask that the time limit be changed to be reviewed in 5 years and expire in 10. There it is. And back to condition 1, that may take care of itself if it gets annexed before then. But like I said, it took us almost 2 years to get this far. I'd hate to start doing this again in 5. But I do think 10-year expiration and 5-year administrative review is more consistent with what we've been doing. 5A is fine. 5B, we were almost done with all the revisions. And again, 5C, just a little clarification. So in case the wrong county guy goes out there or somebody wants to go see what's on site, just to be clear that the material, any material out there needs to be applicable to the excavation company. I mean, if he's got a stack of lumber, that's not what they do. That would be a problem. That's not what we want to do, but I didn't want, we just want to clarify that. And the other conditions are acceptable, and we look forward to you approving the CUP. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions right now?
I have a question. If the issue of material, are you suggesting there be any wording change in 5C?
We are, and I should have brought the, or I guess clarifying that, that the material, because I think, how does the condition read now?
It says storage of material is not permitted with the approved conditional use permit.
So I would say that needs to say storage, storage of material that is being used by the excavation company is allowed.
Just add that sentence is what you'd like to do?
I think so.
Avery, are you okay with that?
So the reason that that language was included in, or written the way it was, is because in the county zoning regulations, the use definition for the heavy equipment storage use is written, and staff's understanding of the use is that it only includes the storage of mechanical type equipment, does not address or specify the storage of any material that isn't equipment. And so when staff was reviewing this conditional use permit application, that was sort of the delineation between the proposed equipment storage use and a different use in the zoning regulations, which is the contractor shop yard use, which is not a permitted use in the Ag 2 district. And so because the way the definitions for those two uses are written, staff thought it was important to clarify in that note on the plan that the storage of material on the site wouldn't fit that definition for the equipment storage use.
I gotta say, I feel like we're just splitting hairs. That's why I brought those pictures. I mean, the rolls of conduit go on the trailer and are attached to the boring equipment. I mean, that's what they do. They don't have a lot of them. We could limit it to, 5 rolls or something. I don't know how nitpicky we want to get, but also contractor shop and stuff, more like that. I think it's important that no one comes to George's facility except the employees. All of the work is done off-site. No customers are coming there. This is a boring company that runs conduit underground. So just don't think those, I think we're splitting hairs about the word material.
Well then, Paul, are you saying we don't need any change at all? I mean, I want to understand that if we approve something, we all understand, we all agree as to what is going to happen.
So I guess the question is, if somebody from the county goes out there, what are they going to count as material? Mm-hmm. I don't think you would count a big roll of conduit sitting on a trailer attached to a big truck as material, but I don't know that. So I guess that's my concern, and that's, I think, why I think we'd rather have the language that says materials that are being used by the excavation company are allowed to be on site.
I have a follow-up question there. So are you suggesting that all of the material that is on site is always located on a trailer or a truck, or would it be that there are the coils and spindles off to the
There's
side?
coils inside one of the buildings, one of the pictures. So I guess the biggest suggestion I'm making is that everything on that site is being used by the excavation company.
Got it. So there's potentially going to be material kept separate from the equipment. It's not that it would always be on the equipment.
It would not that it would always be on a trailer.
But any conduit would always be on a spool, correct?
Correct.
And could a spool be considered heavy equipment if it's on a trailer?
I like
or
where
has
you're going.
wheels? Or I'm asking. If it's on the spool, is it really being, I mean, if you had a pile of conduit over in the corner, which would be kind of silly because it's got to get wrapped up around something. But if it's on the spool, it's obviously serving a purpose. Should, as the applicant wants to be covered, in case somebody new, following the letter of law, goes out there and says, hey, no, is that an unreasonable ask to have that in the CUP? To cover them and the county?
I'm trying to work this through a little bit in my head. Unfortunately, I don't do code enforcement in the county. Typically, when we do code enforcement in the city, we wouldn't necessarily rate something on the trailer as heavy equipment because it's not operable. It can't move under its own power, and it usually has to have another device that takes it somewhere. We usually refer to it as just construction material at that point in time because, as Paul said, you take it somewhere, you install it, and hopefully it doesn't come back with you. And if it does come back with you, hopefully it was meant to come back with you and not an accident where you're dragging it down the road, which I have seen happen. So, typically, if it can move under its own power, is usually when you get into that heavy equipment. And I don't see this as having that differential ability to move unless it is attached to something that can then move under its own power. So it does have a material feel to it in that respect.
I have zero issue with just removing that line about storage of material is not permitted with the approved condition. I would just strike, I have zero problem striking that sentence. Second best would be to qualify it to say any materials, beyond what's needed by the operator.
I think it needs to be limited somehow. What we've run into in the past is where unrelated things have been piled up, piles of rocks and dirt and tree limbs, and I think that was probably what it was designed for.
Like I said, that was my point about lumber. I mean, if you went out there and, it looks like a lumber yard, that would probably not be appropriate. But also, to your point, I don't know who's going to work for the county. I don't know who's going to be there in 7 years. And you just don't want, we don't want a problem down the road.
But if it's all inside the buildings, who cares what's inside the buildings?
I wish it was that easy. I don't know.
But not everything would not. All of it
some
would be
rolls
stored
of
inside.
conduit could be outside, but this is not. They don't store a ton. It's just at the wrong time, and 5 rolls of conduit, and some are sitting outside, and somebody looks at it the wrong way. So I love the idea of striking it or just clarifying it that it's material associated with the excavation company.
I think it would make the most sense, to me, to add a clarification as opposed to striking it completely for the can of worms that might open up 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road.
No, I think that's fair.
Can I clarify the issue? I might have misunderstood staff's take on this. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the inclusion of the storage of material is not permitted with the approved conditional use permit language. That's just a clarification, correct? That if that language was not included, that's still a fact that material is not allowed with this heavy equipment storage designation, correct?
Correct, based on staff's understanding and opinion of what the use definition for the equipment storage use is.
Correct. So technically, legally, we could remove that language, but that doesn't change the fact whether or not they're able to do that. Nor, and there might be a legal position on this that council might need to advise us on, but I don't think that this body is able to make determinations as to, we think this is equipment, we think this is not. I wish we could. It'd be great. We could just cut through all sorts of stuff.
Land use.
But I guess question for staff, is that something that, can we have a finding of fact that a spool is equipment for this purpose?
Probably not would be my estimated opinion. And also in 5 years' time, it may change. The technology that you're seeing now and what's going into the ground may not be what you see then. And then you'd have a CUP that would have a condition that would be very limited in practicality in some respects, potentially. I don't think the dynamics would change that fast, but I've been wrong before.
Yeah. And so from my perspective, for what it's worth, while I'm deeply sympathetic to the applicant's position here and their assertion that material would only be this and only this, and it wouldn't really change the impact of how that site is used or how the public perceives that site or anything else, I think technically we're not able to accommodate that particular request. Now, whether the applicant then does this and takes it up with codes and enforcement later on, that's their determination, but I don't know if we're positioned to give you assurances that that won't be an issue.
I guess if that's your take on it, I would rather you strike the whole line then, right?
Yeah, right.
Fine. Yeah, that's fine.
If we struck the whole thing and I were another company, I'd come back and say, well, are there precedent? Because we always list precedent. Well, I want that taken off too. And then it seems to me you could store anything you wanted out there. Now, is this the owner or is this?
Yes, it is.
You know, you're probably the nicest guy in the world and you would never do it until you did it. So I can't see just striking it. I think working with the codes and enforcement people may be your best.
No argument. I mean, that's where I started with clarifying. I mean, there's not a definition of material. I mean, you know, this is why the city's development code's 700 pages now. I mean, versus 40. But, I mean, I can go either way. I just didn't like the way it was worded so strictly that no material can be stored, which doesn't seem fair either.
Well, on an earlier occasion, Commissioner Munch pointed out that we weren't the final word, and perhaps what we should do is simply approve it as staff has written it and let Paul persuade the county commission, however it should be for the final word.
Yeah, but I guess the way that I'm reading this, the storage material is not permitted. It's not necessary language. We might as well also say, you know, operating a fast food restaurant on the site is not permitted.
Correct.
That's clear in the code. We don't need to state it in the conditions. We can take that out, and the code will speak for itself, regardless of.
Without having this language that kind of confuses the fact.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And Commissioner, I would just, you know that the county commissioners do a lot of other stuff, and they really take your guys' recommendations to heart. And I feel like that kind of language really put the burden on us in front of them versus, you know, us discussing this in front of them if we have to. But I'm with you. If it's not allowed, then, or if it's not allowed, and we have a discussion with somebody else someday, if it ever comes up. I mean, they've been there for years, and this has never come up. There's been no complaints, no, you know, nobody knows about it. The use is so minimal. It's a perfect location to get on K10 and I-70, and that's why it's there. And I said the real thing that all started this was wanting to park some really big vehicles outside. A couple of them can't get in the buildings anyway. So that's where this started, and that's why we're here.
Just to make sure that I understand, the code today does it speak to storage of materials? I just want to make sure that this is really just redundant additional language that might even be more restricted than what the actual verbiage of the code says.
Right, the equipment storage use does not address the storage of materials, but because there is another very similar use within the zoning regulations that includes both the storage of equipment and materials, and that use is not permitted within the Ag 2 district, staff added or is recommended that language to be added as a note on the plan so that it's clear for enforcement of the conditional use permit and the plan in the future in compliance with what is allowed on the site under the heavy equipment storage use.
Okay, I think I heard you say that specific to this particular application, the code does not provide guidance on whether, it doesn't say materials are prevented, but we added that because there's adjacent code that suggests that, so we brought it over.
It was recommended to not confuse the use that would be permitted with the conditional use permit with another use under the code that isn't permitted in the district.
Okay. Well, I've gone all around in circles on this. I would personally be in favor of striking the sentence completely and just let the code speak for itself. And if county, based on this conversation, wants to add some other restriction back in, then please do. But I don't know how you go into this and operate if you can't have your materials with you. I mean,
Yeah. Mike Crawford here online. I have to agree with Commissioner Munch and Commissioner Rexroad. I think this language is unnecessary at best. So,
Thank you. Before we go any further, because that was a lengthy question and answer right there, do we have any public comment on this item? I'm thinking no, but I don't know what's online. Is there anybody online that would like to have public comment on this item?
No one online.
Thank you. Okay, back to the commission.
Oh, goodness.
My only, and this is, I don't know why, this is the one thing I picked out of here. It's the picky part of my mind. So it's no longer going to be a house. Nobody's going to live there. The business doesn't have anybody staying there during the day. People drive in, grab their stuff, and they leave. Why do we care about a septic system and potable water if there's literally nobody working there? That's, I guess, maybe to staff.
Employees.
Well, and do they legally have to provide a bathroom facility if people are literally just going to be there for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the afternoon?
We're not sure.
Okay.
Again, the previous owner built the apartment, and there is a septic system.
Okay.
There is potable water that is in a tank in the ground. And clearly, if somebody were living there, would use way more water than 4 or 5 guys coming in the morning and leaving in the afternoon. So we figure that's a perfect example of something we get to deal with the county when we file for the change the use permit.
Okay, it's just something that I saw that, and it's like, I got to ask.
Typically with most building permits, or if you have something that does have a habitable space, even if it's not an overnight habitation, but you just visit it and you have an office or something like that, that does require the bathrooms, and that would usually trigger those. And I don't know if that's the case in the county code in full, but in the typical building codes, that's the standard you see.
Load it up on coffee before you jump in your truck to go somewhere. I bet you there's going to be a, could I ask a question? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just, I don't know if it's departing or not, but the other comment that was brought up about how it's set up right now to be renewed at 5 and rather than reviewed and a 10-year renewal. Was there a reason behind that, or?
Yeah, so staff recommended a shorter time period for approval of the conditional use permit because the property is located in Tier 2 of the urban growth area. Property within Tier 2 is anticipated to annex into the city within the lifetime of Plan 2040. And so with this proposed use not aligning with the future land use recommendation of the area plan, and also that it is surrounded by other Tier 2 property, and it's in an area under higher development pressure, being on the west side of town. Those are the reasons why staff recommended a shorter time limit on the conditional use permit, just to make sure, or to provide opportunity to review the use for its compatibility with the area as it annexes and redevelops to urban standards.
Brief comment. I'd agree with almost all of that. The utilities are, I don't want to say almost nowhere near this site. The water line is on the other side of K10, or it's all the way at Rock Chalk Park, and the sewer's at Rock Chalk Park. So, one hand, that's why we're willing to sign the agreement to annex, which also means that the city has to help and make sure that these services are available. And so if that were to happen, we think that kind of puts an end to the CUP on its own. Clearly, this is not the highest and best use for this property. Somewhere down the road, I can see a lot of other things on this, 9 acres other than 3 buildings. So, but again, almost, I think every CUP I've done, and like I said, you just did it tonight, I just feel like expire in 10 years and renew it in 5, and if something changes in 5, you can still, they would be brought back to this board and said, hey, you know, water lines in front of them, sewers are, you know, 500 feet away, something else ought to be done.
Can I ask a quick question around this for the applicant, if I could, please? Generally speaking, how much does it cost to get from we want to do this to where you're standing here tonight? And what I'm trying to do is qualify the burden on the applicant and the difference between having to come back again in 5 years versus coming back again in 10, knowing that there are some relief valve moments in there that might mitigate the concerns staff had.
You know, it's a hard number to look at, but I'd go back to what Jeff just said, although, you know, the city just went through a whole new code. You guys live it every day too. You just don't know what changes in, you know, 3 years, 5 years, and then you deal with new regulations and stuff. But it's, you know, it's a $10,000 to $20,000 deal to come back versus just writing a letter to planning and say, hey, you know, 5 years are up. Please take a look at this. Has anything changed? Or usually what everybody asks is they go to the county and says, so has there been any complaints, or, you know, is he using it and something wrong? And then that gets pulled and then we come back.
Thank you.
That usually doesn't happen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Commissioners Crawford or Baroto, anything?
I would just say that with the safety net of them signing the agreement that they're willing to allow the city to annex, which would open up an entirely different conversation if that were to ever happen, I think the 5-year window is a little restrictive as well. I don't think it's necessary if the applicant is willing to sign the other agreement. That's my take.
I would agree with that.
Just to make sure I understand, there is a built-in process in 5 years where there will be an opportunity for review?
If the 5-year time limit was approved as recommended, then in 5 years, the conditional use permit would expire and it would require a new application for a conditional use permit. And it would have to go through the same process with public hearing before the Planning Commission to receive a recommendation and then go to the Board of County Commissioners for a final recommendation.
Sorry, I meant if we stick with the usual 10-year period, there would be a sort of check at 5 years anyway?
Not necessarily unless added as a condition of approval. Right now, the recommendation is for a 2-year review based on the 5-year expiration timeline. But you could, if the commission thought it were appropriate to extend the expiration period out to 10 years, it would be appropriate to, or it could be appropriate to bump out that administrative review to 5 years as well.
It can be added.
Okay.
By practice, it's typically, you know, half of the length of the CUP. There's usually an administrative review in there, so kind of doing it 2.5 is a little difficult, but there are issues where we've seen CUPs have annual reviews, and those typically are more your high-intense uses, and they have those kind of elongated periods. So it can be any varying degree in there. There's nothing that is codified that you have to really stick in that spot. It's just typical practices half of the length of the CUP is usually the administrative review.
Okay, thank you.
So what believe I'm hearing from most of us up here is, and this maybe leads towards a motion of, I don't think I've heard anybody say that they're against this. But we all appeared to be in favor of striking the language about the storage of the material. And it seems to be pretty universal about the changing 2 and 5 to 5 and 10. Am I correct in making that statement?
I'd be happy to make a motion to test that if you'd like.
I will vote against the changing the material. There are sometimes, rarely, that I disagree with staff. I agree with staff in this case. I look at this property, you're going to put something on it that you can use. Ultimately, somebody's going to come and buy it from you and put houses on it, and you're going to make $1 million. But until that time, you have to have permission to do something with it. And I would go along with the no storage. I think planning or whoever comes and looks, you ought to, I hope they would be reasonable. Maybe they wouldn't. But the 5 and 2 year, I am in favor of that. So we can just vote.
Can I make a
9 to 1.
Can I make a motion?
Please.
Or did you want
To go off of that, I agree that given where this particular part of the county is going to look very different in 5 years. Yeah. If you look back 5 years and what was going on there, it's very different from what it is today. I expect that's going to continue to change. So I agree with the staff's recommendation that 5 years would be appropriate here, given the location, the particulars. That said, given the particular use that's being proposed here and the lack of public concern or comment regarding that, I don't have the same concerns about this needing a regular, quick review to confirm that it's all working in the way that it's supposed to. And so I'd be inclined to support 10 years if that's offered. But I want to clarify that I do understand the special nature of this part of the county. And if there was a separate CUP proposal across the street next week, I might find that it's fully appropriate to say it should be a 5-year review.
Agreed. Well said. I'd like to make a motion if I could. I move that we, let me just get here real quick, get to the right language. Okay. I'm going to have to do it this way. I move that we approve the conditional use permit UP 26-0013 at 1691 East 902 Road, forward the item to the Board of County Commissioners with a recommendation for approval based on the findings presented in the body of the staff report, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, with the following modifications. On paragraph 3, that review would change to 5 years. On paragraph 4, the duration would be, it was set to expire in 5 years. I'm sorry, in 10 years. Apologies. Paragraph 4 changed to 10 years. And on paragraph 5, sub-item C, we strike the line that says, storage of material is not permitted with the approved conditional use permit.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments or discussion? Commissioner Crawford, was that, you were getting ready to raise your hand or you wanted to say something? If not, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. 8 to 1. Thank you. With that, we do have one additional item. We need to appoint one county appointee planning commissioner to the North Lawrence Comprehensive Corridor Study Task Force.
Thank you.
Yep.
See you Wednesday night.
County appointee, right?
It needs to be a county appointee.
So that's you, Charlie, Steve, and Andy.
And Prashanth.
I apologize, Prashanth, yeah.
He's not here.
Out of sight, out of mind. Sorry about that.
It's just me talking. It might be a good way for you to immerse yourself into something as a new county appointee.
Okay,
Would you be interested?
I'll accept, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Are you going to move on to adjourning? I had one thing before you adjourn.
I'm
To the
ready.
point of order, we do need a motion on.
We need a motion and
We
a
need a vote?
second.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'd move that our brand-new commissioner, Andy, be nominated to serve as a county appointee to the North Lawrence Corridor Study Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve our brand-new commissioner to the North Lawrence Comprehensive Corridor Study Task Force. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Do I vote on that?
That's entirely up to you.
Okay.
Opposed, same sign.
Yeah.
Abstentions. All right, motion passed unanimously. Yes, Commissioner Rexroad.
Just before we go, I want to take just a minute and recognize Commissioner Eldridge and thank her for a year of exemplary service as our vice chair. And not a lot of people know just all the work that goes into that, but it's like triple time of what we normally have to do with the meetings with staff and planning for and preparing for mid-months and orientation. Mm-hmm. And that was done so well and so thoughtful, and I so much appreciate that. I appreciate, Jane, you led us through a change in the chair and vice chair in a non-standard time, but brilliantly handled, and I just want to thank you for your selfless commitment and care to this community. I really admire you and appreciate you, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I would gladly accept a motion for adjournment.
No,
Or sorry, for a
recess.
recess to
I'll
pick
move
back
to
up on
recess.
Wednesday. We have a motion to recess. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Sure. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. We are recessed until Wednesday.
Oh, so it's not adjourned.
What?
Adjourned.
No, we are recessed.